Hey, welcome to episode 159 of the Titanforge podcast. Ooh, I realize my lights aren't on. Hang on. I'm
Yes.
Gratnus, joined by Tettles and Trell as always, and this week our special guest is the one and only returning Plkatv.
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 Or Plkatv, whatever you like to say.
Yeah, well, it's Plkatv because he always got this L.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so for those who don't know you, M plus tank, prot warrior, fodder reroller, extraordinaire.
Reroller?
Yeah, you know, Prot Warrior's the
Reroller?
best this season. You're playing Prot Warrior. I mean, what else could be the explanation?
It's, the time to shine, I suffered all the trials of Shadowlands, being not invited to pug groups and then understanding that. And then my friends even going like, I'm busy tonight. I don't know what's going on. I'm going to spend it with the wifey. Then you look like 10 minutes later and, oh, you're in a key. It's just one more, man. It's just one more.
For those who don't know, this guy actually asked to key at like 10 p.m. Pacific, which is like when the rest of our region is already asleep, and so he's trying to get people to key in the middle of the night.
Tettle's making excuses
true.
for why he ditched you for a DK last season. That's so messed up.
I mean, how else do you manage having like work life and then family life? You just got to stream in the AM. That's the only way.
Yeah, you sacrifice sleep.
Yeah.
That's what you do.
That's the later.
So this week we're going to talk all about the Dragonflight dungeons, and our idea for this is going to be if you've done the dungeons a few times each, but you still are having problems in them, or there's areas in them that you can improve in, we kind of want to highlight a few things in each dungeon that fall into that category, because I assume all of us by now have done a lot of keys, even if it's mostly for gearing for raid. But even gearing for raid, you're doing 20s this season, so that is
Speaking of,
pretty high keys.
how many quarter stars have we all done to get our whetstones? I'm at 37.
I got the magic 40, and I actually got the whetstone on the 40th run. It was a miracle.
I got it on run 48 last night.
Between us four, we've done probably 200 quarter stars runs.
Yeah, I've run that dungeon quite a bit, mostly because it's the easiest one, though. So it's like always the one where if you do slash key, you see quarter stars, you do it, because I already have two other trinkets I can't really get rid of.
I wasn't mad that I had to farm it for the whetstone, but at the same time, the loot pool is so large that I was kind of annoyed that I had to farm it for the whetstone, but at least it wasn't like Nokhud Offensive again.
Oh yeah, because you had to do the feather farm.
Yeah.
I got lucky with the feather. I'm never going to complain about that.
I had to live through Court of Stars where my Boomkin friend got it, and he was like, I need this for raid. And I was like, what? What do you mean? And the Boomkin kept it.
Well, I needed it too. I farmed it for Razagath. I needed it.
Oh my god.
That guy knows what's going on.
Yeah, definitely it's not as bad as farming quarters, or as far as farming Halls of Valor or Nokhud. Those are much harder keys to pug, in my opinion. Quarter stars is pretty fast and not too bad.
I concur. But yeah, I mean, generally, I think that this is just gonna be like the big points on like, what are the hardest parts of the dungeon? How are you gonna make these more accessible? Talk a little bit about routing in some of the dungeons, because I think that some of them, the routing is a little bit less straightforward than others. Not all of them have anything routing wise that is unique, though.
Yeah, now also this week we do have some dungeon nerfs that have come in. We've had several actually to various dungeons. Nokhud Offensive, boss nerfs. Court of Stars, Advisor Melandris nerfed quite a bit on the damage of that boss. Algeth'ar Academy, tree boss, an interesting nerf. I don't know if you guys have done this since this nerf, but how have you felt? So this one, they've just kind of increased the cycle from every 50 seconds to every 60 seconds. How much extra wiggle room did you feel like this gave you?
Well, I think it makes it so like, well, before on a plus 20, you would have to kill the ad at the exact same time as the second round of plants were being spawned, and then the AoE was happening all at the same time. Like everything was happening at the same time, and that tight overlap was hard to deal with. But now you have like 10 seconds to kill the ad and then like wait before it ever happens at all, up until probably like 23, 24.
It makes it to where like if you have consistent DPS, so say you have like a rogue plus X or something like that, like a demon hunter plus X in your group, you are probably like some other decently high single target damage class, like, you know, like an enhance or something like that. You are probably able to get that branch killed off in time, assuming that people are swapping to it. Like it is very lenient now on getting the branch killed.
Yeah, the only problem with it is that you just run into the same problem that you had before at a higher key level, where you're just not able to kill the branch at a fast enough time, and then all the things start happening again. So it's kind of just like a band-aid fix to like push it later into the season, where people will just be complaining instead of at level 20, they're going to complain it at level 24, 25.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we were doing on 23 yesterday. I don't know if you guys have like zoned in there yet, but like we were doing on 23 and it was kind of chill still. We were able to fucking own it, but maybe it's something that like at that 24, 25 range, it will be same thing again.
I think the bigger nerf was the one that was done last week before this, where they nerfed that branch's health by like half. Like
that thing,
that was the biggest nerf.
So the combo of these two makes it so that the branch is now killable, and you don't have to like banish tack it in order to be able to kill that boss. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Things like I think banish tech is actually bad now because you end up sitting with the brittle bark debuff for a very long time. I do think that like stasis dispel is still pretty good though with the cauterizing flame.
Yeah, before Pika and I did a bunch of dungeons together the first few weeks, and like what we were doing on a +20 on the first week was banishing the first tree branch, so that as soon as you got the second stack of the bleed, you'd unbanish it and kill it and clear both stacks instantly. And then you could just repeat for the rest of the fight and not have bleeds. And also we had an evoker, so they could just take off 4 bleeds with stasis immediately. So we just never had bleeds on the entire fight. But that's like not even a needed strat anymore, luckily.
Yeah, and then I don't know how many of you guys were in Discord all the time with your guildies watching them have over 1 hour Algeth'ar Academies, 100+ deaths, just watching them do it on like the first week. It was such a sight to watch the whole night.
Yeah.
I was in those groups. I was in the trenches. This Pika guy, he's not about his guild. He's actually only about himself. I'm in the trenches helping my guildies out.
What do you mean? Guild?
We got you at 20 the first week, Tuttles.
Okay.
What are you talking about?
Okay. Let me walk that back. I lied.
Now there were some other changes as well. Some other bosses got some damage reductions as well. It's prompted this response from Yoda. At this point, just 4 DPS keys. What's the point of making healing checks if you're just going to give in 3 weeks into the season? How do you guys feel about and I've seen this from like JB as well, sort of a take of like, okay, the healing checks were a cool part of the season, and now most of the big ones are substantially reduced.
I think the Court of Stars one is definitely the one that I have the most defense to, the Melandris one. Because I think that Melandris' biggest issue, at least in my opinion, you guys may disagree, is that it was difficult to see. Okay, first off, it's difficult to know that the Slicing Maelstrom reflects off of the ads. So like I think if you do like zone in that dungeon for the first time, you don't recognize that you're taking reverb damage from the ads or from the boss. And I think the second thing is like, the visuals on the ground effect both suck. Like, and I think that those were if they fixed Melandris with both of those as opposed to nerfing it, I feel like that would have been way more reasonable than slamming it with like a 43% damage nerf. Now it's kind of a joke.
It is kind of a joke. I was watching groups do it on like 23 yesterday, and it was like twice as easy as before. But that being said, I do think they should have fixed the visual clarity on everything, because nobody really knows that you take extra damage from standing next to the boss during that, or from sitting next to the clones. And that's what Tuttles was talking about. So as long as you're like outside the boss range, I think it's 7 yards, you won't take the increased damage.
Yeah, but like, I mean, after pugging so many of these 48 COSs I had to do, I kind of felt if you do it from a high-end perspective, okay, it's doable, right? It's a really hard healer check, but it's doable. But if you go into some pug groups with like healers that aren't as experienced in Mythic Plus, there's like no way they were going to be able to heal that. It was insane.
So, I mean, that's how I felt about a couple of bosses. That's how I felt about Raging Tempest in Nokhud Offensive. Is like a good healer is going to make sure they always have 10 stacks on the buff. And I mean, we're going to talk about these things later. But a good healer is always going to make sure that they have 10 stacks on the buff. And then they were going to make sure that they had enough healing for the storms. But like a healer in LFG doesn't necessarily know that they personally need 10 stacks of the buff. They're not going to recognize that they're going to need 10 stacks whenever the storm starts. And so their throughput's going to be reduced by 50%. And yeah, of course, it's going to be hard to heal. Kind of the same with Melandris. If people are taking reverb damage, yeah, it's impossible to heal. And then I think Strife and Peril is like the same thing. Like if you don't pass your healer the buff, the boss is like very hard to heal without it.
Yeah, it's tough because it's kind of like a double or triple dipping effect, right? Where like the good groups, the DPS players are using their defensives well against some stuff like this Slicing Maelstrom, right? They're not getting hit by the reverb damage, and the healer is like prepared for the incoming damage. So how do you make a fight where that damage with all of that counterplay is still interesting for the healer and is still hard, while not just going to completely pub stomp the people running plus 15s without voice, right? And with people that like are baiting the clones all over the place and are standing next to them and not pressing their defensives in a coordinated fashion, right? It's almost impossible to achieve both of those things at once. And the big problem with these healing problems is if you have a dungeon that's hard because the timer is tight or there's a hard trash pack, you will eventually beat it and get your loot out of the dungeon, right? But if you have a group that just can't beat Advisor Melandris on a plus 17 or whatever, like that is just 40 minutes of their life before they realize that's just wasted and feels really bad when they hearth out. So yeah, I don't know what the I empathize with the, high end healers wanting to have stuff to heal. I also empathize with Blizzard wanting to not have, plus 17 healers and LFG running into this.
I mean, I don't even.
One more. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, all you. It's all you.
Okay, I was just saying. I had some of my healer friends, like specifically, I believe, like even like Megaset, she was talking about. It's just not possible for some classes to heal it, right? Like Shaman was not built, like their toolkit to not be able to heal that at a high level, and Mistweaver needs to be in melee range to heal like high intensity moments, and she can't even be inside that range, right? So it's almost like, oh, Mistweaver wants to come to my court of stars. No, sorry, you can't come.
Yeah. So it's also, how do you make healing that is interesting and hard for a Resto Druid and a Preservation Evoker and still doable for a Resto Shaman? And the answer is you don't make one healer 40% better than another. That's the big answer there, right?
They didn't even hit the hardest thing. And it was like the thing that in my mind needs the biggest nerfs. The last boss of Jade Serpent is illegal.
They nerfed that boss. That boss is in the blue post of the nerfs.
Did they nerf?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They did.
Oh, what did they hit? Did they remove one dispel?
They actually made it quite a bit better. They nerfed how often it casts Touch of Nothingness, and they also made it so that the AoE damage, the blasting 2 random players, prefers targets that aren't affected by Touch of Nothingness.
That's really good.
Yeah.
That means that healers can keep up on dispels now and not fall behind by default. They don't have like some dispel cheese like stasis.
There were a couple of other these that weren't in the post we looked at so far. They nerfed Azure Blade's cadence, how often it does the intermission. They nerfed, or they buffed how long Surge of Power lasts on Raging Tempest as well, and they nerfed Ruby Life Pool's first and third boss as well by a little bit.
Those are all good. I actually think that those are all good changes.
Yeah.
I do still think Shoved Out recast cooldown. That's implying like how often you're getting the debuffs, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, still one of the biggest issues with that boss is that you get 2 at once. But like obviously you can defensive over it once if it happens. If you're only getting 3 a minute or something, you're able to actually defensive through them sometimes.
Well, now it's like Koltharok and Theater of Pain. Koltharok also did scale out of control at some point in the seasons every time, but this way at least there's not like imagine Koltharok, except for the debuffs came faster than the healer could dispel, period. So it was just no matter what, you're gonna get overran. At least this is a little bit better now.
Yeah, I actually didn't see those in the notes. That's a good change.
Yeah. All right, so let's start moving through our dungeon by dungeon discussion. We have Algeth'ar Academy up first. We've already talked a little bit about Overgrown Ancient, but the TLDR there, as you mentioned, right, is kill that branch before the burst forth, right? Before you get zoned out and have all that other stuff going on to clear and then everybody stands in the green circle, clears their stacks. How do you prioritize between damaging the branch versus damaging the boss versus damaging all of the little lashers that are yet to be uprooted?
It depends on what tank you have, right? Because obviously there are some tanks that are tankier than others. Like if you put a Brewmaster and you put like a Prot Warrior, your choice of what needs to die first, is definitely going to vastly change. But I think it's more about, like, at least nowadays when I'm watching like high Algethars, like 23 people attempting 24 keys, it's not so much about killing the ads as fast as possible, because it is something super important, but it's about like getting the branch, everybody clearing their bleeds off, and finding ways to keep the little ads actually off of the tank. So things like using like a sweep, using Ring of Peace, even things like that are much simpler, like crippling poison on your rogue, just so that they can slowly micro-kite the little ads away without actually getting too many stacks. Vortex, Typhoon, all these little things that you can do as DPS or healers. Like that is like the super core mechanic to keep your tank alive on Overgrown Ancient.
Okay.
It's also,
Okay.
I'd say it's pretty important. If your group has a poison dispel, you can really, across the board, you can focus less on the lashers, because if your healer's dispelling on cooldown, it's going to be a lot easier for the tank. However, if you don't have a poison dispel, your tank is going to take a ton of damage.
Yeah,
so
poison
use
dispel,
every CC in the book.
DK tank, paladin tank, dwarf tank. These are the recipes for making that fight a lot easier. Yeah.
You didn't say
Okay.
Brewmaster.
Yeah.
You didn't say Brewmaster. Brewmaster also has a poison dispel.
Well,
let's be honest,
yes.
Brew doesn't have time to press a poison dispel.
Well,
They
I mean,
gotta
honestly,
do
like
other
Ring of
stuff.
Peace, poison, like that. It has tools
Yeah,
to deal with
you
that fight,
can,
but
for
like
sure.
it is a challenging thing to execute versus pressing
I mean-
Stoneform, right?
They're busy trying to keep themselves alive after taking the tank hit. Yeah.
Wait, what? There's a tank hit on that fight?
Yeah,
Is there
people
not?
didn't
Yeah.
even know there was a tank
I
hit.
didn't-
until,
I didn't know there
week
was
three.
one.
Wait, you didn't know?
Is
Raw
there
Warrior,
one?
by the way.
The first like 2 weeks, I actually didn't realize that the tank hit mattered, because I only was playing my Prot Warrior, so I didn't actually notice that there was like it increased the damage on me, and it was fine.
Jared still doesn't know.
Yeah, I
didn't
still
know there was
believe
a
you guys are
tank
gaslighting me. There's no way there's a tank mechanic on this fight.
There's a tank mechanic that makes you take double damage.
Yes,
For
the tank
8
mechanic.
seconds.
Okay, but I have a 100% uptime on a debuff that makes me take 0 damage from physical damage, so that counteracts. So
I didn't realize
hate
that
you
Prot
guys.
Warrior just didn't take damage from it because of block.
do you guys not have shields? Hello. All right. How about Croth? How do you handle doing the goals on Croth? What order do you guys like? Because I know that sometimes in Pugs this gets pretty hectic pretty quick when people just insta send the second goal. You just have the full, your damage runs out, you're at 40% on the boss, and then you're getting blown around with the fire coming in.
I'm a fan of like resetting after the 4. Okay, so like you can eat the first 3 stacks of the debuff, fine, more or less, and then like the 4th one you can reset before. It really kind of depends on the level, and then about the 5th one that's like when a minute to a minute and a half CDs are back up as well. And so I like to dunk after the 4th before the 5th comes out to get him stunned with fire first. That's
It
my
kind of
prefer-
depends. It kind of depends on like for me, it's depending on my group comp and looking at my DPS CDs, right?
Yeah, okay.
So if they send on pull of Croth, let's say like Trell, for instance, right? Trell is like a 2-minute class, right? He does if he sends Tiger on pull, then we kind of want it for his burn phase. So we actually try to push for 5, because if you push for 4 stacks, then all the CDs going to come back at about 1:30, 1 minute and a half. CDs will come back right in time for that, but he'll have nothing during the burn, right? But if you do go for the 5th one, then he will have 2 minutes for the burn. So if you have a lot of like Fury Warrior kind of 1.5 minute CD classes, then it's fine to push at 4 and you'll be fine. But at 5, you want to really push for those 2-minute classes.
I also actually look at Thundering. I think that Thundering dictates when I'm hitting the fire as well. I think that fire is pretty unanimously first at this point, right?
Yeah, for sure. You don't want to deal with wins the entire fight. You want to do wins as late as possible in that fight, for sure.
Yeah, and so you send wins maybe the second time you get to 4 or the second time you get to 3 or something, depending on the boss HP.
Yeah, probably
Depends on
3 or
what's-
4, I think.
Yeah.
Like that's what we did on like 24 Tyrannical and some key I did last week. We did 5 and then up to 4, just barely living the 5th and then the 4th. And it's hard to live 5.
Most people I don't even think need to dunk the second one. Like if you're doing a pug and it's like a 17 or like a 16 or something like that, and you have people who are, with 4-set, 405 item level. This isn't going to be for everybody, but like if you're 4-set, 405 item level, you're doing like a 16 or a 17. You probably don't even need to dunk the wins. Like it really just kind of depends, and you are probably better off not dunking the wins because those tornadoes are really annoying.
Yeah,
But hear me out. I actually heard there's some new EU tech that EU servers were playing with last week or maybe this week.
Okay.
You actually pull Croth off of his platform and go bring him to where like you jump in, and you don't have any tornadoes there because tornadoes are all localized on the platform, not on
really.
around him.
So they're just snapping all of the bosses?
No, it's not snap. It's just like on where you land.
You just take him off to the
On the
side.
ground.
You just pull him off, and then
okay.
it makes that phase a lot easier. I was gonna try it, but I haven't. But like if the viewers want to try that first, and let us know if it wipes you.
Yeah, let us know.
It is really hard to clear Thundering on that fight when there's fire and winds going and tornadoes everywhere. It is so rough.
All right, Veximus. How do you guys recommend handling the orb soaks on Veximus?
Pika?
Trell says I have to do it. So I do it all, and unless your tank is like you basically try to soak as many as you can before the tank frontal, because whenever the tank frontal happens, you just plant, right? Or else you're just gonna be like nuking one of your DPS
Yeah.
non-stop. But basically you just try to, like, what we do is we just move with the boss around, and like it just follows the tank while the tank soaks as many orbs as possible, because at a high enough key level, the mana bombs that happen, and if they also have like more than one stack of the soak as anybody, either healer or DPS, and you don't have like a big defensive, you'll just end up dying, right? So typically it's the tank's job to try and soak as many orbs as possible. And if you are a DPS or a healer with a defensive CD at the time, you can go always and help it. I mean, in the end of the day, it's always better than like somebody soaks it than it reaching the boss, right? Because then that'll just hit everybody.
Did you know that if you let a bomb hit the boss as well, he actually syncs up his mana bomb plus his 100 energy cast at like 2 minutes? And if you don't, say you do the fight perfectly, he syncs them up around the 3-minute mark. And by the way, if you have the mana bombs plus his AoE synced, you are very likely to lose people. People are very, very likely to die.
What if you let the boss soak after 2 minutes? Does that force the cast earlier?
It may desync it. I haven't tested that yet. I only know that he syncs up at 3, and you just sit there, you look at it, you're like, well, this is cringe.
How does that? Does it increase his resource?
Well, yeah,
more energy.
Whenever he gets a bomb, he gains more energy.
I thought it just did AoE on the group.
No,
that makes a lot more sense now.
He gets energy.
Yeah, and then
you don't really let those orbs go in normally, so you wouldn't notice.
All right, then finally, how about trash? Do you guys like doing any skips in this dungeon? Is there trash you like to either focus and pull a lot of or avoid? For instance, I've been a fan of pulling a lot at the end of the dungeon with the arcane bombs self-damage tech.
Have you done that recently?
No, I haven't done that recently. I did that in the first 2 weeks or so. Is that bad now?
First 2 weeks, we were pulling that entire platform area, like 30% count in one pull. And now, if you pull more than 2 invokers, everybody in your group is dead because the arcane missiles hit DPS.
Yeah,
the goddamn invokers.
They were scaling with Mythic 0 for a long time, and then they fixed it. Like
that is very sad. Okay, so that's why that pull was good, not good anymore. So how do you guys like to get your 100% count now?
We basically do 2 pulls in that area with maximum 2 invokers in each pull.
Yeah, you have to really stop the invokers as much as possible. So this is not really good for pugs anymore, because the problem was before it was the arcane missiles were doing no damage. But I don't think back then people noticed that the arcane missiles were hitting other people other than your tank because it was just doing so low damage. And then once they buffed it, now you just see like everybody dying randomly and there's nothing the tank can do. So and a lot of these pulls, like individually, have 2 invokers in it. So it makes it so that you can't really combine anything with getting more than 3 invokers because it's just unplayable.
I do generally still think that this is the trash that you're pulling, though. I'm not a big Mana Fiend enjoyer, even in coordinated groups, much less in groups that like I'm not in voice with. Like that first pack, that pull, you can double that up, but that should be like a lust pull. Like that is
the bridge on the left.
For sure.
Yeah, like the bridge on the left. Outside of lusting it, I would just generally be looking to skip those mobs. I don't like them, whether that be with a shroud or invisibility potions or whatnot. I think that like I would still be looking to pull the invokers, even just so I can skip the Mana Fiends. I don't like the Mana Fiends though.
Okay,
yeah, that's accurate. I mean, on 4 you have to lust that double bridge pack, or else people are going to die in a high key.
So in terms of sequencing, do you guys like to go Overgrown Ancient first, or do you like to go left and either pull or skip those bridge packs first? What's the meta?
I think the meta is going to move towards going left first. It's a little bit better for less timings, I think, and for speed. But I think because of how Overgrown Ancient has been such like a wall for people, it's kind of like I just kind of want to get that over with. So we go there first. Can we kill it? Oh, we killed it. Okay, let's just do the rest of the key instead of go through the whole key for 30 minutes, realize we can't kill the tree boss, zone out, and lower it by 1 level.
Yeah, I think left is probably going to be default soon, but on Tyrannical, I think you want to lust the tree, the bird, and the last boss. And so you may want to like go right, turn around after tree, go left, have lust second for the bird, and then go all the way to the last boss after that.
It depends on if you think you're gonna have enough time to do that, right? Because like backtracking that much is gonna lose you a lot of time. But I think that's up in the air a little bit.
Well, the problem is the bird is going to be just a straight timer check eventually.
That bird is very, very powerful.
Mhm.
Is he still bugged, by the way, if you wipe to him?
I wouldn't
I don't
I
know.
haven't wiped him. I haven't wiped him in a long time, so why don't you let us know?
Yeah, what's the bug?
If you wipe to him, you can't get the wind goal to work at all. It just does not
Oh.
work.
Oh.
I have seen it where the wind goal just doesn't appear. Like sometimes without even wiping, it just doesn't ever spawn.
Have you guys actually never wiped to that boss?
No, of course
I
not.
haven't recently. No.
I've only ever wiped to
God.
the tree boss in that dungeon, I think.
Twitch chat is saying it's still a thing though.
Yeah, okay.
Hmm. All right, let's move on to Ruby life pools. How do you guys like to handle the start of this dungeon? It has a lot of there's a lot of trash available at the very start of this dungeon, but there's also trash available later in the dungeon. What's the play with these nasty mobs, or less nasty potentially than the upstairs ones?
I mean, it's pretty linear, right? This dungeon is pretty linear because of what you have to do upstairs. Like you have to kill each one of those inferno fire elementals upstairs. You have to kill a dragon, at least one dragon, because you need
God
to be able
bless.
to pull the boss all the way around. Whether you choose to, I think there's some EU teams that have been favoring the red dragon over the white dragon, but I think most of NA kills the white dragon over the red dragon. I'm not sure what the thought process is there. I think eventually the white dragon at a high enough key level will just kill you with rolling thunder, whereas the red dragon gives you a chance to kill it once it hits 50%. So maybe that's like the thought process beyond that. But really, there's not like too many differences in like what exactly you're gonna pull. It's more about the size you're gonna pull. And like it's just all your like about 34%, 30% of trash comes from the first part, and then the rest of it just comes like pretty linearly all throughout the rest of the dungeon.
Well, I mean, you can pull those storm callers that are off to the side, though, right?
The shotcasters?
Shockcasters, of course.
Have you ever
Yeah.
pulled one of those?
On accident.
Those things are insane.
It wiped me whenever I accidentally pulled it that one time.
Dude,
yeah.
I pulled one once in like I think a 19 or 20 or something, and it didn't actually seem to do anything. I don't know. I was like,
really?
is this thing actually good? But maybe it just we got lucky or something. It was
Maybe they
casting like
secretly
Lucky
nerfed them.
Strike, and then it was somebody's taking extra day. I don't know. I couldn't read, but it didn't kill anybody. I don't know. This whole dungeon is pretty nasty, right? The first part does feel like it's relatively easy for the most part. You gotta stop the big slams.
Seismic tectonic slams.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
you also gotta kick the chill weavers, right?
Skipping as many of those big boys, the big rock dudes, the juggernauts as possible is generally seen as preferred. Like in up until the point where you even start like shrouding the first juggernaut, like if possible. Some of the top groups will like shroud the first juggernaut, not even play the second juggernaut with like a sap or like a mind soothe or something like that to make sure that they're able to get around it. That kind of thing is seeming like it's a little bit more meta where they're doing some like the terrace entries and whatnot, and just trying to get through that trash. I think generally the first part is mostly okay. I think the upper ring is probably the biggest issue for a lot of people, including like we had like three questions on our tweet asking about the upper ring trash.
Yeah, so in fact, that's what we are incorporating our Q&A throughout this episode. And one was really curious how you handle Lightning Drake in the upper ring of Ruby Life Pools in fortified weeks on higher keys. So yeah, like you said, that Rolling Thunder, very hard mechanic. Also a bunch of damage done to your tank, although usually they can live that and aren't the person in most danger of dying. How do we handle the Lightning Drake? And yeah, do we ever go Fire Drake as well, or like we said, the EU teams are kind of doing that sometimes.
I think it's probably easier to talk about the Lightning Drake because there's a couple things. Like it's the first thing you can do at the top of the ring. It's right after an RP like wait, so most people have their CDs regardless, and so you just go in. But there's a big gotcha as soon as you pull it, where well, actually not anymore. I forgot they removed the debuffs from the Scorch Links. So there used to be a gotcha where they'd bait a dispel on the tank from the Scorch Links, and then the healer wouldn't have their dispel for the actual mechanic like 2 seconds later. But that doesn't exist anymore. But basically the whole group just has to pop defensives like either right before the first Rolling Thunder is applied or right after, whichever way works better for their class. And the healer needs to dispel one instantly, heal someone up, and whoever has the debuff needs to worry more because they take extra damage from the debuff as well. And then they dispel the second one when the group's healthy enough.
You can also pre-immune it. You can pre-immune the Rolling Thunder. So I don't like pre-immuning like the first set. I generally like to like pre-immune later sets. And I don't know if you burn multiple immunities at once, but I think that mathematically you shouldn't burn more than one at a time. If you have like a rogue plus something else in your group that has an immune, like a rogue plus hunter or something like that, you shouldn't burn both turtle and cloak at the same time.
Yeah, it's like very similar to like the last boss mechanic, right? Like you want to pre-immune it because it can still choose you if you have the immunity.
Yeah.
That's the only way to kind of like survive it, or else you're just gonna end up losing people. And the problem is, it's kind of like it's like rolling thunder, but it's like a rolling effect because once somebody dies, it just gets worse and worse. And then as people are running back in, they're dying constantly, running back. It's just like the only thing left is gonna be your tank, like if they can even survive like that long.
The common Ruby Life Pool's experience getting farmed by Thunderhead.
Yeah. And then this starts the chain farm as well, because the next packs are really nasty as well, leading us to our next question. How do we not just die 100 times upstairs in Ruby Life Pools? I assume this is the mandatory pulls with the fire alleys. How do we handle those?
The only hard ones are the double Cindercaster runs, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the only difficult ones.
Well,
but yeah, go ahead, Trell.
Yeah, good.
Well, there's only one fire alley dude that has a double Cinder Weaver with him, and it's the first one on the left, right after Thunderhead. And so that's the one you want to lust on fort and just burn one of the casters as fast as you can, because like no matter what comp you have, you're gonna run out of kicks like within 20 seconds on that pack. So you burn one with lust, the tank CCs the other one as long as they can and kicks it or whatever, and then you should be fine once one Cinder Weaver is dead. Other than that, you heal through the Inferno cast from the elemental, and you try to skip as many Inferno casts as you can by just killing the elemental fast.
Flame Dancer is a pretty big deal too. They do like a Flame Dance cast,
Yes.
and you need to stop that. If it goes off, then you just wipe. It just does like a ridiculous amount of AoE, and you just die 100 to 0.
Mm-hmm.
You reflect the first tick, and then you stun that.
You can just
boy.
reflect it. Yeah, just reflect it. I don't understand. but honestly, like this dungeon specifically, I think it's a true testament to trying to understanding like your PvP CC skills, because it's really about not over DRing mobs, making sure you have a good rotation on how you can deal with it. Like for instance, like when I go in, like when we're doing keys, I'll lock down one of these Cinder Weavers for myself. Like for the next 30 seconds, I got it, right? Like that between kick, Stormbolt, Intimidating Shout, Shockwave, having also another kick, like any way of stopping it, like I can basically CC for like 30 seconds, right? Yeah, like it's like that's the way to do it. But that's like kind of huge for people to understand in pugs as well, where your AoE CC really affects the group, because I'll like this the multitude of times I'll watch like a Demon Hunter and they'll just meta on the pack for damage, right? And then that suddenly ruins your CC chain, because now I get one less stun in the pack. This is the same thing. Like if I'm trying to stop this one mob, let me Chaos Nova versus Fell Eruption. Let me sweep over like using paralysis, because your individual stops are really more impactful and more important if you're just trying to stop one thing rather than trying to AoE stop everything, because it'll just DR everything crazy. Because there's actually a build for Prout Warrior that does a lot of damage that relies completely on Shockwave. Like just everything is like Shockwave, like lower cooldown and big damage whenever you Shockwave. And I used to play it on the beta for fun, and all my friends would just hate it, because by the time like 30 seconds into the pull, the pack is just completely DR'd. You just can't stop anything.
Yeah, it's fucking annoying if you have packs that live for like 45 or 50 seconds, and you're like, but this guy DR'd the pack. Anymore. Yeah, this guy DR'd the pack 20 seconds in. Like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah, for those that don't know, DR exists in PvE as well, where if you stun something 3 times, you can't stun it anymore for quite a long time.
Yeah, but like that's super important for people to understand, like how to control mobs and how DRs actually affect it, and that actually will tie into better performance in keys like Ruby Life Pools, where kicks and stops are super important.
It's worth mentioning too that the debuff that the elemental dude gives out to a party member puts the circle around them, and if you put that circle on the mobs, it'll knock them up, and that counts as a stop as well. So if something's flame dancing, I think one always overlaps with a flame dancer. You can just stop it with that.
Also, the Flame Dancer, when they die, they get like this debuff and they start spinning. That's purgeable. So a lot of people still don't know that. It's purgeable and they just stop spinning. I forgot what it's called, like Flame Dance or something like that. Anyways,
Blaze of Glory. Yeah,
Blaze of Glory. If you just
Blaze of Glory was a good movie.
Or you Arcane Torrent it just instantly goes away, and like it just saves all your DPS dying from like random swirlies on the floor.
All right, let's talk about the boss encounters in here. The second boss of Ruby Life Pools is one that has been nerfed, a little bit since the first couple of weeks, but still can be pretty nasty. I think often as well, pretty nasty for Prot Warriors as well, just the damage that the Searing Blows puts out on the tank. But you also have this intricate dance involving this Molten Boulder, I would say, is the mechanic that people being aware of makes this fight the most easy.
Yeah, this is one of the biggest tank buster dungeons in general.
Yeah.
Okay, like when people say the biggest question I get in my stream all the time regarding the Ruby life pools is how do I live this boss and how do I live like Jade Temple's third boss? It's like almost the exact same answer, right? Like you just have to rotate your CDs in like almost the perfect way. You need every time she's doing her debuff on you, you need to have Demo Shout, Reflect, and then like one other major CD, whether it is Shield Wall, Spell Block, like all the sorts. Which Spell Block isn't even that great of a CD for it because it's
a dot.
It's not the initial portion that hits you. It's the dot that's killing you, and Spell Block does nothing for the dot portion. But yeah, this fight, it really tests your tank ingenuity to not have an oh shit button. I know a lot of tanks out there have that oh shit button where it basically hits your health stone, your health pot, shield wall, last stand, and then your very scared moment. But you really have to spread it out here, or you just will die.
So from a ranged DPS perspective, it's important to know that like ranged DPS or ranged healers, the ad that is summoned here will always summon on you. And I think that generally summoning the ad in front of the group, if possible, is going to be your best bet. Because then at that point, you can move the boss in between the ad and the fire patch and then proceed to bait the boulder back towards where the previous fire patch was, or even bait the boulder to the far right and far left. It's honestly kind of fine. Generally, though, you need to know that this fire will also insta-tick you. There are some ground effects in the game, and this fire is one of them that this season will insta-tick. This shit is cringe. So you probably want to know that going into this as well.
Yeah, this fight's all about the tank and the range DPS baiting. Like as long as those two roles do the placement of the ad spawns and moving the boss correctly, it's not too bad on the rest of the group.
Yeah, there's one more mechanic which I think a lot of people don't see or notice is that like right there, you can see me on screen. If you're not standing beside the elemental as the tank, the elemental will actually just start beating on your DPS. And actually, I believe like it two-shots them or something like that. And anytime you're like leaving the range, maybe you're dodging a boulder, maybe you're just scared for whatever reason, like that's just how DPS will just randomly die. You need to, as a tank, you need to taunt the elemental, and you also need to be standing beside it at all points, or else it'll just kill your DPS.
Yeah, if you do taunt it, it won't melee anybody else for the duration of your taunt debuff on it as well. So if you do need to be out of range for a bit, like as the thing is dying or something, that is an option for you as well, is throw a taunt on it as you're running out of range. That'll save you DPS potentially one melee. So yeah,
good tip. That's a rooted mob problem. Rooted mobs all have that issue.
Yeah, Dathia will do that to you as well. Dathia will randomly do that in the raids, even though she's supposed to just blast your tank when they're out of range. Sometimes she'll just melee person instead. So
happened on our prog a couple of times.
Yep, sure did.
Shout out to Lucid.
Bang. All right, how about the trash towards the third boss, which is also nasty. This dungeon is kind of just nasty trash after nasty trash. Yeah.
Third boss trash is just like a big healer check. I think that like trying to break up the pulls if possible is normally going to be your best bet. Because if you do Thundercaller into Thundercaller, your healer, one, is going to hate you, and two, may not be able to heal this if you don't have any defensives and you don't have any like major healer CDs. Just slamming these Thundercallers back to back is probably going to be problematic. So breaking the pulls up if possible is going to be your best interest, I think.
Yeah, doing something to avoid the Tempest Channelers, right? Those are the ones that AoE your group for a bunch. And then you have the High Channeler at the end. A lot of people don't know how this one works, right? It steals the shields from the other mobs that are around and gives itself that shield, right, when it casts that shield. So if you can burst the ads that she spawns, then you avoid, or if you can remove their shields, you can avoid her getting that big shield.
Which, the thing to do is just to use Arcane Torrent. Like each individual person, you just torrent a set, right? So like if you have like 3 Blood Elves, you just torrent it, or you mass dispel it, and it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah. You can even like single purge with like Demon Hunter and stuff like that if you don't have any belfs on that set, and that
it's
will
a really
also save you. Yeah, you can also save you like a decent amount of shielding.
I don't know if this might not be the case, but I think if you purge, it'll make her cast the next storm faster though. So sometimes it might be worth actually letting the shields go and just burning through the shield to like give your
It's-
healer some time to recover.
It's like so much damage on that shield. Like like you were committing a lot of DPS to that shield.
That's
and you ended
true.
up killing that guy, 30
Yeah.
seconds later, which is it's obviously not optimal for time. I guess in some situations, if I needed 10 seconds for or something to come back up.
Let's be real. Blizzard said healers want to heal, man. You don't worry about that. Just kill the thing faster and it'll be fine. The healers will figure it out in one way or another.
There's a reason that healers' best trinkets are Incarnate Icon and Whetstone. It's because healers are made to buff and do damage. They're not actually made to heal.
Yeah, true. Well, this actually I forgot to say something earlier, but about like Yoda's tweet about how they're making the dungeons too easy to heal. I really feel like all of Ruby life pools is hard to heal. Every single pool, just about. Like I think maybe a lot of us are too used to playing with experienced players. These dungeons are really hard, especially the Dragonflight ones. And I think that some of these nerfs are probably good. But anyway, moving on.
Okay, let's move on to the last boss in this dungeon, which I believe is one of the most knowledge-based boss encounters that we have because it is so hard, but there is a lot of stuff you can do to make this one easier. So at the start, you have the two mobs separate. You push into phase 2 when either one gets pushed below 50%, right? So you want to kind of damage them both evenly. Do you guys like stopping DPS and pushing during a breath, or what?
I like stopping DPS and pushing during your breath because it gives you like 15 to 20 seconds of just free damage on both of the mobs. Now, I do understand like why you would just want to push straight through and never stop DPS, but like if you can stop for 3 seconds for the dragon to land and do the breath and then immediately push them below 50, you get like a ridiculously long time of just 2 target cleave for free.
True.
I feel like I feel like the boss will naturally push during a breath anyways. Because if you're doing the fight correctly, you're always targeting the dragon, right? Like range are always on dragon, and then whenever the dragon lands, melee like hard swap onto dragon. So that essentially is what's going to happen anyways. And then on top of that, I think once the boss is very close, let's say like 53, 54%, and that's the breath that it comes down on, that's when you just lust and you crank it, because then you get a good like 20 seconds of just the boss like breathing, flying up, and then landing on the spot where it picks up the passenger. And that's like all free damage spot. And the boss can sometimes be like, the dragon can be like 30% health already by the time that happens.
Yeah, sometimes like on Fortified Week, it can kind of even just die there, which is always pretty cool because that boss is really nasty. Now, how do you guys handle the fire mechanics, especially? Obviously, there's the P1 fires, which I guess we could talk about first, where it just targets one person. Where do you like to drop those, and do you have a plan for managing that?
This is pretty advanced, but the winds rotate counterclockwise throughout the fight. They start blowing to the exit, you could call it, like toward where the boss spawns, and then they rotate counterclockwise or anti-clockwise after that. And like you kind of want to stay in the middle of the room for the common strategy so that you bait the dragon landing near the group, but you can move a little bit to place your puddle whichever way that wind's going to blow next, so that it like blows most of it off the platform if possible.
Yeah, and then there's actually a second strategy which you can apply too, which is you can actually just drop the fire always on the pillars. Like there's the 2 pillars as you walk in, and because like 50% of the time using the right pillar is going to be correct, and then 50% of the time using the left pillar is going to be correct, right? For wherever the fires are going to go. And then on top of that, you also want to always be very close to the center of the platform, so that the dragon always lands where melee can easily get to it. Because if you're off to the right or left sides of the platform, then the boss's breath is actually going to be baited to the edge of the platform, which is very difficult for melee to hit it. And like unless like this fire like completely not anywhere, then it's just really hard to hit. So like that's typically the strategies you want to use.
They did change the fire in the last phase too to be beta. It only goes on 3 players now as opposed to 5, which is nice. It's not bad.
5 was insane.
Yeah, that was
so
wild.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, I got linked to Chinese WeakWar that it put arrows on my screen which direction the wind was going to blow too. I forgot about this.
Oh yeah, I did see that weak core. I haven't tested it yet.
I haven't tested it yet either. It just got linked to me. I was like, wait a second, I need to.
Tedos, are you letting weak auras play the game for you, man?
Absolutely, yeah. I think that weak auras have generally made the player base worse, just as a general rule. And but I will not be the person to not play with weak auras.
How would you handle classic WoW, man? It's too
very carefully. I would actually clear Ulduar in 55 minutes.
Ah, nice little slow jaunt through Ulduar, I see. Taking your time, really.
Yeah, it's a good progression experience.
I see.
Oh, we didn't talk about the first boss. We should probably hit
Okay.
that.
Yeah, let's do that. So first boss, what this I guess there's some questions here about cooldown usage. Do you like to just send the lust on the first shield in the first whelp phase and then carry that through and maybe push the boss into the second one with it? Or how do you guys like to handle this?
Wailing Arrow.
Wailing Arrow is a good one.
Well, they fixed that, I think, yesterday.
Did they fix Wailing Arrow? Oh, no.
Yeah,
I did. But there actually is one more way you can cheese it with his Prot Warrior. Apparently, if you do the AoE, Disrupting Shout, but
I knew it.
You don't do it during the shield. You do it 1 second as she is casting the shield, and it'll silence her. And then they didn't fix that apparently. I haven't tried it because I don't want to get banned for abuse. But apparently
Banned for abuse.
You know you're in a 5-player dungeon, right? Yeah, that does happen there.
That's funny.
No, I just don't want to get us nerfed even more, But apparently that is the way you can still do it. But essentially, what I think, at least from a tank perspective, there's like 2 whole different mini games on this boss. One is the complete tank survivability, which is just like your own mini game on trying to survive with your healer, and then there is getting your DPS to not kill whelps and focus on the shield. That's the whole other part of the fight that you need to get through.
I think having a good balance of like boss damage and damage onto the shield and onto the whelps is actually important, because you don't. So here's the thing from like a DPS perspective, you don't want to push the boss too slow to the point where you end up getting a lot of the Chillstorm casts, because if you end up getting a lot of the Chillstorm casts, like it's gonna make your healer hate you straight up, and like it's probably not healable if you're getting like 3 in phase 1 or 4 in phase 1 or something like that. So you do want to burn some CDs on pull. Primarily things that are like 1 minute to 1.5 minutes, maybe even like 2 minutes right on pull. That way they're up for like the second shield that happens around the 40% mark.
2 minutes are up for the second shield and
yes.
keys.
Yeah, so I think that like for most players, like 1 minute to 1.5 minutes should be burned on pull to try to help push the boss into the first shield, and then you can kind of slow play in between the first shield and the second shield, and then have your CDs back up for those.
Yeah, but from a tank perspective, though, I think that tanks need to understand that where the pressure point is. Like, I mean, obviously the boss is just blasting you the entire time, right? It's a difficult fight, especially since it's all magic damage that's hitting you. So a tank like Pro Paladin actually handles it like better than other tanks, but then you have a tank like Bear, right? Or like Brew, which take a ton of damage from that kind of fight. So
yeah, you just get owned.
Like the key to that fight is knowing where do you actually need to pop your major CDs. And I think the confusion for a lot of tanks is they're just hitting it whenever they feel low, but usually your healer has time to top you. The hard parts are usually during those chill storms when the DPS has to run out, and then the healer's being sucked in, and they just can't plant and heal you. Like, that's the key when you need to use your major defensive CDs.
If the healer gets it, you also know that you need to pop something big. I think that like also rotating like defensives, including things like rally, and then like health potion, health stone, that kind of thing is also very, very important. So say on the first chill storm, if you defensive it, that's totally fine. Second chill storm, we can rally. If we're getting a third MP1, first off, we're in trouble. But second off, we can just make sure that we like health potion right before the chill storm hit goes off to make sure we're not going to die. Because you're not going to die 100-0 from the chill storm unmitigated. You're going to die you're going to get ticked down to 60, and then it's going to explode, and then it's going to kill you. So you need to make sure that between that time of 60 and the big initial burst from the chill storm going off, that you health potion, even if you overheal it from 60 to 100.
Yeah.
I do think in general... Oh, good.
I was just going to say, it's just a really hard boss to live on every roll on that fight. Tank's getting railed by magic damage the entire time. The group's getting nearly one-shot every chill storm stuff.
Yeah. I think that one of the lessons that this teaches you as a tank as well is the general principle of your danger level isn't just based on your health and your incoming damage, but it's like, what is the group looking like, right? Because if there's group-wide damage coming out, you're not getting globals dumped into you, but if you're the only person who's taking damage, your healer is going to be healing you. So learning that kind of instinct of I'm in danger based on my group being low is, I think, something that this boss can teach you, which is applicable for most of the rest of the game as well, but this boss really highlights it. All right.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's talk about, first of all, little logistical discussion here. I realize we are now over 50 minutes in here and we are 2 dungeons in. How do we feel about doing just Nokhud and Azure Vault and then saving the legacy dungeons for next week?
Okay.
I feel like that might be the vibe.
I think that's what's about to happen here.
Because otherwise, I feel like we'd be rushing these later ones to.
I mean, Nokhud's
actually...
going to take us an hour no matter what. So
yeah, all right.
I was writing Nokhud and I was just like, what am I? Is this about to be just like the whole entire dungeon? What am I supposed to say here?
I just want to let the viewers know that in Teddle's show notes, he wrote, "We could be here all day."
Yeah,
for
yeah,
the
for
Nokhud
Nokhud.
section.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to keep it concise here. Just like I don't even know what to say. There's a lot of shit.
Well, I can start us off with a beautiful jumping in question from previous guest Thune, who asked, for Nokhud, do you think there will be different boss routes for Tyrant plus Fortified? For example, on Tyrannical, you could lust Raging Tempest first, or do the big pull with the patrol near Granith with lust on Fortified first. Which of, or do you guys like the idea of potentially a different pathing between the two? I will note that you could lust Raging Tempest even if you went there second, right?
Right.
As well, yeah. So maybe you don't need to do this.
I don't think you really change the route too much. Like you lust the first huge patrol by Granith pretty much every week, I think. Second lust is always on Raging Tempest. Third lust is always on Tira and Maruk. And then fourth lust will come up on last boss. And that's like, I think that's just what you want to do in that dungeon. On Tyrannical, you can get to Tira and Maruk a little faster. Lust on cooldown, then go finish your trash, and then go to the last boss area to have a better lust timing on last boss if you want.
Yeah, I feel like the problem with there is like you don't want to backtrack, right? Like you don't want to be like flying. Okay, let's go to the elemental boss, then let's go to the twin boss, and then go all the way back to the other side. You're just gonna be dragon riding all day and like not have any vigor, right? Like,
well,
that's just not how it's gonna work.
Dragon riding is the fun part of that dungeon.
Yeah, it actually is kind of fun. I like it.
All right,
it's with 3 vigor.
Cool. Let's see. We have another question about routing in there, which I guess was the same one. So yeah, I guess the main thing is the lusting the Stormbot. Like, if you had to rank your lusts in order of importance, on Tyrannical, it's got to be what, Storm Boss, highest prio one?
I hate
like
twins. I think twins are more difficult than Storm Boss now, especially with the nerfs.
So if you were like, there's some keys you get into where you kind of stuff gets weird, right? Your lust timing gets weird. So keeping that priority, I think, in your head makes sense. Of we really need to make sure we have lust for that boss. Although usually, if your lust timing is super weird, you're either already depleted or your key level's low enough that it doesn't matter too much. So not something to, I guess, worry too much about.
I think the general pain point for the large majority of the player base is going to be Raging Tempest, though. Like it's challenging enough to heal unless your healer understands fully what they're doing, and your defense and your DPS, mostly your DPS, understand how to use their defense as well.
Yeah, Tyrion and Maruk only get hard once you get to like 20 plus, I think.
Yeah,
maybe a little bit before that, but yeah, before that, it's definitely Raging Tempest is the hurdle.
All right, so with that kind of broad picture of the dungeon, let's start with just the very first trash area, because often you'll see groups wiping to this due to surprise patrols being added to some of these early pulls. So how do we prevent this? How do we handle the first boss section of Nokhud Offensive?
I think the key is to not get frontaled and any of the catapult pulls. Like, your tank has to be very aware to not frontal your group. At the same time, there's that patrol that's in the center of the room, right? So if your tank is trying to point the frontals away from the group, which is like, naturally you're gonna think, okay, let me just go on the other side of the group. That's how the patrols end up pulling, right? So the key is trying to pull to either the left or the right as the tank. That way you're never pointing the frontal at your group, and then your group kind of adjusting around there. But also the hardest point is if you're not a blood DK, is just grouping the mobs. Right, like longbowmen are a pain in the butt. The horn callers are a pain in the butt. There is some tech that you can do, at least as a prot warrior, where if you choose to leap into the group instead of charge, then the for some reason the longbowmen decide to try to melee you and will like converge onto your one spot. But if you charge in there, they'll just plant and say, I'm just gonna shoot you from far. So like there's little tech points here and there, but essentially like the hardest part is grouping the longbowmen and making sure they don't just like kill your group. Because if you have too many, they're just going to kill everybody.
Rally the Clan's an insta-wipe, right?
Depends on the key level.
I mean, it's got a long cast. Just make sure you stun or disrupt that somehow. But yeah, also to Pika's point, if you're not a Blood DK or a Prot Warrior, if you Dragonfly directly into the middle of the pack, the archers will run to you for a second as well. So you should have a plan as a tank to like land directly inside the pack you want to land in, press the defensive immediately, press something to get aggro immediately, and then you'll be in a better spot for the rest of the poll.
And then there's one more mob there, which is called the Beast Caller, and it does a fixate on a random DPS or random healer. If you just stun the fixate ability, I believe it's called Mark Prey.
Hunt Prey.
The Hunt Prey, yeah. That makes like your ranged DPS feel infinitely better. Instead of them running and screaming in pain, you just see random typhoons flying out here left and right, and you're wondering what is going on, and it's just one little bird chasing like your little boomkin around the field. Like that's what's going on.
All right. Yeah, that they actually use that mechanic, the fixate mechanic. That's also in like Brackenhide as well, so be a good one to kind of get ready for.
That.
Yeah,
that's a terrible dungeon.
That dungeon.
All right. How about the so then first boss itself? Usually pretty easy, right? Just the call to either swap off and commit to the boss versus keep on killing the ads based on the boss health.
Basically just swap to the ads, slow them, stun them in the middle so you can cleave efficiently onto the boss while you do it. The healer or a ranged DPS or the tank, if they don't know to do it, should run to the catapult and immediately fire it the moment it gets off cooldown, because it resets the boss's timer on the eruption and you can get more ballista shots into the fight that way.
What about the double ballista shot or triple ballista shot?
There's also a bug where you can fire the same ballista twice, apparently, or 2 ballistas after that at the same time, and potentially fire 4 times at the same moment into the boss.
Is it like the Azurite clicking from BFA?
I think 2 players just start the cast at the same time.
Oh my god, it's actually
you can do even more. I heard you can do even more than 2, but the problem is that based off the amount of people who fire the ballista is how many ads are gonna spawn running to the next ballista next. So if you fire it 4 times, there'll be 4 ads running that you need to stop from breaking the next ballista.
I got a great idea. All right, so what if we hit it 5x, and then your druid, because you guys play with druid a lot. What if they're playing mass root?
That's what I was thinking. Like you can master root 4 the ads. I don't even know if it works that way. This is kind of a new bug.
They lose Ursals, but they gain mass root.
True.
But yeah, I mean, there was this one EU, I think that originated from like an EU team doing it, and they were just basically like nuking the boss with just ballistas. Like every 5 ballistas per ballista.
Well, I mean, if you could likely do 50% of the boss's HP in 2 ballistas, and then you just do the other 50% with the ballistas. 10 shots.
I think they're gonna fix this, so don't worry about it too much. But that's the easiest boss in there anyway.
Yeah, definitely don't worry too much about it. Then we get to the trash towards Raging Tempest, which has some mobs in here that will actually slay your tank as well if you're not careful. Right, there's the mobs that deal 50% of their physical damage as nature. That can be
they're tricks now. They're tricks to handle all these packs, which I think people will learn like after some time of doing it. So the first is the kicks, right? The kicks going off is like really bad. But basically, like the most priority kick is actually not like the mini boss in each one of these, not the lieutenants, but actually the primalist. Because the primalist does something called Raging Tempest, and then also summons more squalls, and squall like just destroy your group or your tank. So that one's actually the priority kick. But the mini boss or the lieutenant mobs in each one of these packs actually is a 2-person kick. It's a 2-person kick if you really delay the kick. So like if you go kick like right before cast and then you wait again and do it again. So you can actually just put 2 people onto that, and then all the other 3 members just stopping the other guy, and like they can be stopped with like stuns, with knocks, with anything like that, and it's actually perfectly easy. The squall is, as a prot warrior, is really easy because you just reflect it and it does 75% of its health on the first hit.
So dumb.
You charge it and you hit reflect and it's dead.
So dumb.
But other than that, like I mean, it's not too bad. And then finally, there's the guys who do the arc blade. And the arc blade is actually like most things you'll find in Dragonflight is if you just like microkite and step back like 2 steps whenever they're casting the arc blade, it actually won't hit you. Yeah, arcing strike, it won't hit you. So it's just all about kind of like keeping your distance.
We also love the Kodos.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the microkite thing because this is really common in these dungeons and it'll save tanks a lot. So like the arcing strike, you just take a step away as soon as you see the cast start. You do that same thing for shield maidens and halls of valor. There's shield maidens throughout the entire banquet hall and every poll, just about. There's another one somewhere, right?
Yeah, Shadow Slash in Court of Stars from
Yes,
the
that's another big one.
Mistress or whatever her name is. I don't remember.
Yeah, just walk away from the Mistress as soon as you see Shadow Slash start and you won't take any damage. Same thing there. It puts the abilities on cooldown too, which is why it's so good.
Okay, how about the boss itself, Raging Tempest? How do we recommend handling this one? We talked about it a little bit, I guess, at the top of the show, right? Of making sure your healer gets to 10 stacks and gets to extend their buff. But how do you actually facilitate that as a non-healer in the group?
I think the easiest way of doing it is just making sure that like players are around the boss. I think that you start to run into issues of not being able to extend if you're not looking to extend at the correct times, and if you're running around at ranged, that normally starts to become more apparent. So first off, I guess the most important thing to know is that the circles that go out on players, whenever they go off and they're on top of orbs, they make the orbs explode. So you try to soak as many of the orbs as possible right before those circles go off. That way you can have some stacks. And then beyond that, during the electrical storms, it's just about being around the boss, playing keep away, and you want to delay it as long as possible. You want to be soaking one of the orbs like at the very last moment, right as it would reach the boss, to try to extend your buff, because then that will allow you to extend it into like the second rotation on the fight.
Yeah, and I would say from my experience and even watching pugs, 50% of wipes on this boss are attributed to thundering.
I have wiped on this boss to thundering multiple times. Actually,
I think the way that you wipe to thundering on this boss is you get the thundering and then you get the strike that makes it so you're like spread, right? Yeah.
Yeah. That's a boss where you either clear immediately or you look at what's coming up next and then you decide if you can hold your buff for a few seconds or not.
Yeah.
But thundering is just hard, man. Thundering is probably responsible for 70% of my depletes this season. It's just a hard affix.
The biggest thing that I changed is I changed my alert from the air horn for whenever I should clear thundering from 3 seconds to 5, and it's actually saved me a lot.
Yeah, true.
It's a big one for me.
I think also on Raging Tempest tanks, you probably just don't ever catch orbs unless they're about to hit the boss. Then you get a free orb. You want to leave those for your DPS and healer especially. Healers should be assertive and take orbs from DPS against their will probably sometimes. At least to get their initial stacks going, and then you can kind of spread it out and only like grab one when your debuff's going to expire.
So I got good news, bad news. Good news. The orbs don't scale with dungeon level. And they hit you for like 16k base, which is still a lot. Like if you've seen people die to the orbs by soaking like 5 of them at once, and it doesn't 100 to 0 them, but it's like it puts them low enough to where they can die to other stuff. Bad news is that they don't scale with dungeon level, and they should be hitting you for like 90k per orb.
Yeah,
that would be insane.
If that change gets made to this boss, they're gonna need to nerf it again. Yeah,
I think that I'm okay with 16k per orb not scaling.
Yeah,
but I'm not positive.
But also something else to note is that based off Charles' point, there's some circumstance where you want your tank to get it, because when you reflect on that boss, it actually scales with the orbs.
These prot warriors,
actually, yeah, the reflect is insane.
Like 300k per reflect, you can do up to 500k out of each reflect. It's kind of insane.
He's talking about a mechanic where if you step out of melee, since this is a rooted boss, like we talked about earlier, if you step out of melee, he does like a gale something ranged attack on you, and you can reflect that, and it does a ton of damage.
Same, you can do this on Dathia as well if you're for raid oriented players. A little bit of attack.
So you shouldn't do this as any other tank, though.
No, you don't want to leave melee as another tank. That thing pipes.
Okay, great.
What was it? There was something. Dorky was calling something bear reflect at some point. I don't remember what it was that he was doing that.
It was in essence. It was the
yes.
It was the dumbass shield essence.
Yeah. He was calling it bear reflect and potentially taking damage.
What did he step out of melee range of to get bear reflect?
He wasn't stepping out of melee range, but he would like take extra damage from stuff to bear reflect.
No, there was something in. Well, there was also something in BFA that you could step out of range of, and it would
I can't
shoot
remember.
you. But I don't remember what it was.
Interesting.
But he would also let bolts on third boss of Shrine of the Storm just go on to him, and you could call bear reflect, and it's just like it's the dumbest shit I've ever heard.
Not as good as spell reflect. Okay, let's talk about the burial grounds trash towards the duo boss, which has this patrol of birds that often gets in the way.
What are these birds doing?
Yeah, what are these birds doing here? Indeed. That patrol flies very quickly around all 4 of the mini boss platforms, right? So you will basically always pull it if you don't pull it intentionally yourself first, right?
It pretty much will pull. Sometimes I've had it fly over me and not pull, and I was like, wait, what? I actually wanted it. But you probably should just like intentionally look for it and grab it on that first pack, just so you don't have to worry about it anymore. It's kind of like the name of the game in a lot of these dungeons. Just take out the patrols first, so you don't have to worry about their timings after that at all.
Dude, I've wiped that pat so many times. Like I feel like that pat into that pack that you guys are pulling right here on video just is so annoying, because if the birds are desynced, if you get the bird patrol with the 2 birds on top of the mounds, it just desyncs their frontals, and it's a pain in the ass to dodge.
Yeah, true.
But they're on the tank, right? So the tank can just face them a different direction and just don't be on that side.
You know, you just swing it around though. Like
so new tank players will probably like swing really hard and put the frontals everywhere in every direction. But what you should do is, since they're going to be slightly desynced unless you stun them, is like just slowly move to the right over and over again. Just like rotate a tiny bit for each frontal, just so you like kind of put them in a nice arc, so people will have like this free 180 degrees of space behind the mob, so they don't get hit for sure. And also, I was going to say, if you're a DK in this area, you should take the first Mystic you get to. You can control.
Oh, you can take those? What does it do?
They provide Bloodlust for your group every pull.
Not bad.
What?
Yeah, they're insane.
Pro Warrior doesn't have that.
Yeah, nerf DK, man. This is the same crap as what Inspiring was last season, where they just don't have to deal with it because they can just mind control it. That was awful.
Yeah,
nerf DK.
This DK oppression has gone on too long. Us
Dude, DK
Pro
is
Warriors
so
will have
good
our
in this
day
dungeon.
someday. Yeah.
This is a DK dungeon for sure.
All right, how about the boss itself in this area, Tira and Maruk? How do we handle this one? I guess the main thing is the tank, right? It's just make sure that they stay stacked up, so that they don't get a stacking damage.
Well, there's the Gale Wind mechanic, right?
Yes.
Or Gale Arrow, where it's best if your entire group actually stacks on top of each other, because then nobody needs to dodge the tornadoes on the initial hit. They'll need to dodge it when it's coming back in, but it's always good for your entire group, even your range, to come in, just so it's easier to heal. For instance, like an Evoker healing with Dream Breath, it makes it a lot easier. And then 2 is just like you don't have to dodge anything; it just makes it super simple.
Previously, during that, right after that Gale Arrow, you would have a shot coming 0.2 seconds after the Gale Arrow lands,
Yeah.
and you could potentially get one shot. Now that has been nerfed. Good nerf, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So you do have a little bit of wiggle room to get people topped up, but it should still be a little bit dangerous. You're looking to pop like either personals or rally or darkness or something here, like Aura Mastery, things like that, like a barrier if you have something like that. During the Gale Arrow, that is a great time to use defensives.
Yeah, like we just stacked there in the video, but you do have to be really stacked, and you want to press something at the same time. So every Gale Arrow, that's really where the bulk of the damage comes out during the fight. And then as long as the tank is pre-moving to stack the bosses together every time the one of them leaps somewhere, you should be fine.
And so how can you tell where the leap is going to go to? How can you tell where the tank needs to be positioning? Because I feel like I see this messed up a lot.
Yeah, so if you're a slow tank, you got to be watching pretty carefully, because the boss that leaps will like turn and face immediately where she's going to leap to, and then she also puts a white swirly where she's going to go to, so you can just immediately start going that way to get out of the fear circle and to be in the right place a few seconds later.
Yeah. The most important one that you have to, like, I mean, obviously you can always kind of move the bosses to kind of together, but the most difficult one is right before repel happens. If you allow the bosses to be apart and then they cast repel, because during that time the boss, the one that melees is actually, he actually plants wherever he is. So that boss can be getting up to like 13 stacks I've seen at one point. If you don't get those bosses that close to each other right before the repel happens.
Do y'all kick repel? I haven't been, and it's been like it saves us like a little bit of group damage because you're getting less shots.
Oh, that's a good point.
Do you guys kick it insta?
I've been
kicking it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kick it as a tank.
Because otherwise your melee lose up time. I don't know.
I mean, the initial pushback is large, but the pushback subsequently is not that big. You could actually just run against it and be fine.
I mean, it's kickable.
That's something to consider, though.
Cool. Yeah,
if
my
you time your
ability
kick,
it works, so I press it.
Even as a melee, if you time your kick, and this is something cool for Herja too, actually. If you time your kick immediately as repel starts, you'll get it before you get knocked out of her range. And then like same thing on Herja and Halls of Valor, where if you like press Death Strike the millisecond after the frontal beam knocks you away, you'll still Death Strike up to full health as you're getting knocked back and not be in danger. There's a lot of things like that too in these dungeons.
Well, I guess if you kick it before it knocks you back, that's kind of lit.
Yeah.
How about the last boss? Is there anything? Actually, also let's talk about how do you get to the last boss in Nokhud Offensive? What do you guys like to do to make that
The left
journey?
side.
Yeah, the
There's
left side
there's
stratagem.
a new tech where you just fly all the way directly to the last boss area. I don't know if you have a clip of it or
I
you can
think
pull it
I
up on the
do,
MDT. Yeah, like right here.
Oh yeah. Perfect.
This is just better than any other strategy, right? You just go straight from the twin boss all the way to right here. You just walk up straight to the end. You don't have to deal with any of that front trash. No random pulling. It's just the best way.
By the way, all these neutral mobs don't give any count. Don't try to pull them either because they'll beat your ass.
Yeah, if you're ever doing this dungeon on M0 though, they do give mats for one of the leatherworking weeklies. So after you finish any Nokhud Offensive on M0, if you have the leatherworking weekly, that's a good area to go and pull all those mobs.
I can't.
That's a
I
Dreadnought
cannot
tip of the
believe
week,
it.
man.
Oh my
That's-
god.
Yeah, that's just one of the many things I've learned this expansion. Okay, yeah, then last boss itself, you can see here you're doing a little bit of a stratagem involving dying intentionally to these two mini bosses so that
I can't believe you used the B-res for this.
Yeah. You
This
can do
is
this
so
with like a
worth.
rogue pulling and vanishing or a hunter pulling and feigning or something like that, or you can just use a B-res, right? Pulling those two mini bosses and then
Oh, we got rock tech
dropping
in
combat,
this
right?
group
'Cause
as well.
if you pull the boss, you get the mini bosses with it, right? But if you pull the mini bosses first and then the boss and then the person who's in combat with the mini boss dies, it's it's much better.
Nothing happened on the screen there.
Yeah, nothing happened to Trell there.
Well, so I mean, if we're really looking at it, he actually kind of got griefed. So they're tanking the boss near this rock, and if you bait the charge over the rock, the boss like will cancel its charge before it goes anywhere else. So I mean, in reality, this isn't Trell's fault.
Yeah.
No, melee getting hit by this when they know it's a wide butt every single week. It's eventually
Well,
the melee's
they
fault.
nerfed the wideness of the butt in this hotfix as well. So
No,
to be-
not
this
my
happened to
fault.
me like yesterday.
okay.
Rock tech, did you see that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the rock thing is we're taking it next to the rock so that the boss, whoever gets the spear, will bait it directly into the rock, and then he'll try to charge, and then he won't move at all, basically.
Yeah.
But
And this is
Why?
good as well if you have those two mini bosses alive because you don't want to pull it. I would recommend in most groups just kill those two mini bosses and
Yeah,
don't worry about doing the whole skipping them and then not pulling them during this fight. That's pretty technical to do.
I
In the
love how you use the
intermission, obviously
B-res.
anything you could do to grip up all four of these mobs. Obviously DK is OP for this. Interrupting Shout is OP for this. Ring of Peace, you know,
Big DK
Evoker
dungeon.
Nox, any of that stuff to group these mobs up, very, very valuable. So make
I
sure
don't
you
think. I
save
think
those
if
for it.
I think if you don't have a DK tank, you should just seriously consider just CCing two of them.
Mm.
It
Oh,
just
yeah.
makes the fight a lot easier and a lot like safer because the only one that can really group them up quickly is the DK, or if you have a DK DPS with
Right.
Gore Fiends. Like
Mhm.
if you don't have those two things, like just
Save on one.
CC two.
I think
People
if you
will
have
just die.
I think if you have Venge, it's probably
Yeah, Vengeance can. I mean, even then, it's like you're either you're sigilling two or you're interrupting Shouting two and bringing them onto the other two.
Yeah.
But
It's
it's
just
still
riskier.
sketchier. Yeah.
The big thing
It's-
is like start rolling CC the moment you can. Like once you start getting like chain stuns and stuff like that, it's a lot easier. But if you're just relying on single interrupts, you're going to have a problem. I think that's a
Yeah,
pretty good
also
point.
in a pug, like you can't really call kicks
Mhm.
on that stuff, and you have to use all your kicks just to get them in if you don't have a DK. So it's like I would just offer if you have some kind of CC before you fight the boss, be like, hey, I'll CC star, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then your group won't worry about that till the
Yeah,
other
because
three
then
are
you
dead
get
or
more
something.
kicks on the ones when they're actually in as well, which is big.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to Azure Vault. Azure Vault, last dungeon that we will talk about today.
Logistically, this was maybe not our best play.
Yeah. So I guess first question is trash in this dungeon because you do need to pull quite a bit of trash to get to your count. Where do you guys like to find count in Azure Vault? Because especially there's a piece of technology whereby you can skip one of the rings, but if you do that, you have to pull a bunch of trash in the rest of the dungeon. What do you guys like to do for your Azure Vault routing?
I
mean,
actually love the way this dungeon has evolved
Yeah.
like throughout the season. Like it's crazy because you went from don't ever touch anything to touch those whelps, avoid them like crazy, and then like slowly kind of wiggle your way through the dungeon and just like avoid the avoidable things, to now let's just pull as big as we can, piss off every little whelp, like pull as massive as we can so we can skip the ring, jump off, and anybody who can't jump off the ring, you're just dying and we're gonna res you.
Right.
Like that's how it's evolved, and I kind of I went from hating this dungeon to like loving it now.
So the tech is
really
after
cool, yeah.
after these 2 arcane elementals, you just jump off and land on the lower ring and
No,
mass
it's-
res.
No, that's not
Oh.
it. I have a clip.
Okay.
I don't know which one of these is the clip of it.
Which one? Yeah.
It should be the second one here. It's the second one here.
The second one? Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. This is potentially even different tech than what I know. Oh, okay, this one. All right, yeah, I have seen this. Okay,
This is the best way of doing it, in my opinion. You're jumping down to the Azure Blade entrance is what you're jumping down to.
yeah, so you skip the lower ring and you do some of the upper ring instead, or you could skip the upper ring and do some of the lower ring instead. Both of those are options, different sets of mobs on both of them, but this one's an easier jump. And then
if you jump normally, you will die. Like as you need some kind of way to stop it, or you can use Potion of Gust.
Yeah,
so
Potion of
that's the
Gust.
one that kind of like gives you a little like goblin jump whenever you use it. It sucks that you have to commit your pot there, but unless you have a way to jump down like heroic leap, like any kind of like disengage, then it's going to be hard for you. But also with the new Evoker's Rescue, they can actually rescue somebody down. So it's actually a really cool use of the mechanic.
Or, and hear me out, what if you're a panda?
yeah, Panda,
Maybe.
reduced fall dam, OP. Do you remember the Panda tech in, what was that? Theater Pain?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
like that.
Bang.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
I got a couple clips for like Evoker can rescue you if you jump right, and then as a monk you can actually roll onto the doorway above that platform where you land to take less fall damage, and then jump off that doorway after to land there.
Have you tested reduce fall dam enchant?
I used
I don't know.
that graceful avoidance. That's just like this. I don't know.
I think you still die because
Yeah.
I've seen people. I think people have that generally just
Okay.
from raid, right, and then they still die on impact.
Yeah, there is some other tech that I am aware of for this
Boots?
as well. Yeah, there's Shadowlands Momentum Redistributor Boots. That's a bind on use engineering item that you can click, and yeah, that reduces your fall damage as well. So another option potentially for that one.
Trail does it somehow too. I don't know how you make it down every time, but you do something, right?
Yeah, I roll onto the doorway above where you guys
Ah,
land.
So it's
Like roll sends you far enough to land there first, and then you jump the rest of the way down.
You want to pull up this tactics tweet?
Yeah, so this, I guess, the thing, right? Like, if you're skipping a bunch of trash here, you actually need a lot of trash from the rest of the dungeon, right? So,
Yes.
Tactics asks us, hypothetically, what do you do when your tank always insists on pulling the 4 Fury pack, yells defensive stances for losers, and proceeds to continuously feed it down mid to said pull, asking for a friend? I agree, defensive stance is for losers. I will admit to having pressed it on this pull, though. It is a nasty, nasty pull. You can stun the frontals and then not die to it. That's maybe the best way to handle it.
Yeah, if I die while I'm in battle stance, it's because the DPS missed their stop. It's not my fault that
Yeah.
I'm like, in battles. Like you should have got your stop. That's just the
Yeah.
end of it. You know, it's not that I'm in battle stance. Fix your stuff, and then I'll be fine.
Agree. But yeah, like,
You want to talk about how to do those pulls, Pika? With the
Yeah.
several Furies?
So there's actually I was going to use it a little bit of tip of the week, but there's actually a lot of different ways you can handle these kind of pulls. They're actually quite difficult, so I wouldn't really advise you doing it in a pug scenario, but maybe if you're with a couple of friends that you can talk to and communicate, because this is kind of ties into what we were talking about in Ruby Life pulls, right? If you DR mobs like just randomly, like these kind of pulls become impossible. And that's because
True.
the mobs that we're looking right there, those shards, they do something called Piercing Shard. And Piercing Shard is just basically this gigantic tank frontal that's like, I believe like a 180 cone almost of
Pretty much,
everything in
yeah.
front of it. And it has unlimited range. So even if you are on the, like, you can barely see them and they're casting on you, you will just die. So like how you handle this is by just individually stunning them or like stopping them with some kind of incapacitate. This works with like paralysis, with Ring of Peace, with Stormbolt, Intimidating Shout, Typhoon, anything, incapacitating Roar, just like anything you could do to stop them individually. But also they have this ability called Arcane Fury, I believe, which is a dispellable buff. I believe it makes them do more damage, correct? So you want to torrent that if possible. And then also the other tech that's kind of recently been found out is that you're able to LOS it. So like I have a clip of it also in the
LOS
tip of the week. So if you go under the Azure Vault LOL piercing shard Dratnos,
Yeah, on it.
yeah, you can take a look at that. So there's actually these like little pillars on the wall in the second area where you can use them to LOS any of the shards that you're. I totally abuse a random pug here, by the way. I told them do not stop anything, and I'm just gonna LOS them. But yeah, you can just constantly LOS them, but don't try to like flip it on the group and LOS on the same pillar. Just go to the further pillar and you won't take any damage. And this is just a really good way to kind of bait them. So what you do is you step out to the right, they'll start casting again, and then go hide again. Step out to the right and then go and hide again.
Okay, but I guess the downside is the fact. Okay, so basically, not LOSing them means that you're going to stop them and they're not going to get their cast off, which means that your melee are less likely to die. LOSing them definitely puts your melee in a position to where they can get clipped by the frontal if they're not super aware of where it's going to be.
But that's why I jump towards the side that you're already not supposed to be on, right? Like you just go further, and there's like 4 pillars worth of that, like all the way down. So you can just keep going further and further as long as you have aggro.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's just do your other tip of the week as well with the Spellfrost Breath from later in this dungeon too, which comes from the Scaleboon Lieutenant. Is that a similar idea here?
Yeah, so like this one's not an LOS one, but this is kind of what Trell was talking about earlier on, where there's a lot of mechanics that are tank busters, which are just rangeable by either stepping back or just distancing. This mob specifically gets crazy hard on fortified keys and fortified raging. So this one is rangeable, and all you do is like you just jump out of range, like Vengeance Demon Hunter, lots of other tanks can just outrange it, and you just stand there and it does nothing. So this is a great way to deal with this mob specifically. And I believe also the Ice Cutter that it does, I heard is also like you can just backstep and not take any damage from that as well.
Oh, is that also microcuttable? That's big.
Yeah, I heard that it was what it was.
Okay. Same thing with the Dragon and Halls of Valor. You can just range that as well. You just don't want to change the direction of it at the same time, obviously. And going back, one more thing that I think is really important for tanks to know and DPS is like the Arcane Furies that we were talking about, how they do the piercing shards. A lot of mobs like that are coded nowadays to only be able to cast one at a time. And that's why you'll see them be like piercing shards. It gets stopped. Next one starts casting piercing shards. It gets stopped. Next one starts. So when there's 4 of them in the pack, they just do it like one by one, the entire pull. And so you have to have a lot of stops ready and lined up. But as long as you understand that, then it's kind of an easier way to deal with them.
Okay, so what do you guys do for the first boss? Anything like super special? Like a lot of it's on the tank, right?
Yeah, just move the boss so that he hits 4 with this frontal, and then it's very easy. I don't know.
Yeah, you get 4 to 6 every time. The hardest part about it is I only realize when I'm playing my alts is he actually puts that one tank buster ability. What's it called?
This boss has a tank buster too?
Infusing Strike?
Yeah, no Infusing Strike actually hurts a lot. It actually hurts a lot on your tank, and I only noticed that when I was playing like my Prot Paladin or my DK, but on Prot Warrior, you can just Spell Reflect every single time and it does no damage.
Dude.
Yeah.
I didn't know that thing hurt. Yeah. That's wild.
Warrior's insane, man.
Yeah.
They're so good.
Okay. Second boss, Azure Blade, has received a nerf to how frequently it does its intermissions. How do you guys like to handle this boss? Do you like to pop cooldowns on pull? Do you like to save them for intermissions? Or just use them on cooldown?
I'm a big every CD into the boss. Make sure you pop your defensives and your healer CDs during the intermission kind of guy. I think the big thing to know about the intermissions specifically is like not all healers are made equal. Basically, everything except for Rest Druid is going to struggle with you being super spread. And so making sure that you stay stacked and you move as a group around the ring is going to be important, because like Preservation Evoker is going to struggle the most. I mean, Preservation Evoker and like Arsham are probably going to have the most issues if you're completely spread as far as possible. But even other healers like HPAL and Mistweaver are probably going to not have a great time if you're super far.
Okay. How about third boss? Third boss, Telash Greywing.
Oh God, fuck this boss.
Does a lot of damage. A lot of
do you have the clip of
Frosty Ground as well?
Do you have the clip of Tuttles disengaging off the platform?
Yeah.
No, I don't have that clip. I've seen it though. I had it linked to me.
We'll link it in the Discord. Join the Titanforge Discord.
Pika, I think you linked this to me, maybe.
No, I didn't link anything. It was funny.
Okay, yeah. Let me just say, multiple people linked me clips from that stream. There was another clip of him getting frontaled in Court of Stars by the third mini boss. That
Leaping Larry,
yeah,
Just-
LeBron James.
LeBron.
Just so you know, like if there was a mistake out there, Tettles has done it. So you know you don't have to feel so bad. And
Okay.
he's done it on like a high key.
So here's the deal with third boss. If you don't move insta or use a mobility button or perfectly jump out of the ground whenever the frost bomb goes off, you get insta-ticked and it's cringe. That fight sucks.
Yeah, so you take the frost bomb hit. It takes you down to like 40%, 30% health. And then if you don't get out of the puddle immediately, you might die on a high key. So what you want to do is you want to press forward and jump at like 0.2 seconds left on your debuff expiring on the frost bomb. And the momentum that you have from the jump will get you out of the puddle in time. If you're a slow class that doesn't have like roll or disengage or something.
If you're a demon hunter, you can actually double jump glide VR back onto the platform and jump and leap it off the platform.
Oh yeah, that's kind of sick. Yeah.
You can do that with multiple classes. You can do that with Rogue, with Grapple. You can do that with Monk, with Transcendence. There's anything that has like those kind of abilities. I highly do not recommend it for any other class than maybe DH actually doing it.
It's really
Tons
unnecessary.
of times. Yeah, I've seen
Like
it. You can actually do it Boomkin too, Tettles. Why don't you do it where you jump off and disengage right back?
he's just jumped off the show, and hopefully he'll disengage back soon. But yeah. Okay. Then there is the last boss, Azure, or not Azure, Umbral Skull, which does have some tech that is a question of like, is this tech or is this bannable
It's
tech?
fixed.
Okay, it's fixed
It's
now.
fixed.
All right.
We just tried it to make sure that it was fixed. Not that we were actually planning to ever use it in keys, but you know we were just testing it, and yeah, it has since been fixed.
So it was briefly possible to snap the last boss up to the third boss ring, right, and just kill it there, which it didn't do as many mechanics or anything up there at all, but apparently that's been fixed now. So in that case then, that brings us to our question here. How the hell am I supposed to tank the last boss of Azure Vault on higher Tyran keys to not die to orbs and make it easy for the team? Is this, or this dungeon on Tyran is insanely cursed? And yeah, how do you handle this last boss? This is really hard.
For a tank, you just reflect every dragon strike, and it doesn't hurt that bad.
That's a really good idea, yeah.
We hate Brawl Warriors.
The other thing is, it
I
hurts
don't know
pretty
why
bad.
any tanks are having trouble with this. Just spell reflect that ability.
You either just take no damage from melees, or you also spell reflect every single tank buster.
You can
Yeah,
spell
yeah.
block if you screw up your reflect and don't have it for one of them as well.
Yeah, you could shield wall it so you don't take any damage, and then like you can spell reflect every other one, which is fine. And then the big tip on this boss is actually because you need to what the problem is that once there's too many balls on the floor, it's very hard to move, and you just sometimes get cornered, right? So actually, the tip to fight this boss is actually using the season affix, because during thundering you aren't rooted, right?
Yeah, true.
And this is one of the bosses where you really want to milk that thundering time so that you can actually reposition the boss, reposition to kill all the shards that spawn, and then clear at the last second so that you can then deal with the buffs later. You always have your healer dispel it off of you, but they really don't want to be doing that because they have to. Probably, if you don't have a Proud Warrior tank, they're dispelling the tank on cooldown with Dragon Strike, right? So these are just like a few things that you want to deal with.
I have a question. Is this tinfoil or is this real? I heard that the orbs prioritize moving towards players with the slow debuff. Is that real or is that just made up?
I'm
idea.
not sure. They do have some really erratic behavior, but they definitely refixate on some kind of player after a few seconds.
They certainly move
Usually.
towards players. It's very clear that they're moving towards players and they're trying to wander towards you. I heard somebody say that it felt like, or it seemed like they targeted players that had the slow on them.
I don't know. That seems a little bit like tinfoily. Where
It seemed tinfoily to me too. Whenever I heard it, I didn't know if anybody else knew anything about it.
Yeah.
I think every tank has a way to live the slow though. Aside from the Dragon Strike, that's a whole nother ball game. But like every tank has a freedom or some sort of mobility spell to get them out of harm's way every now and then. Like Avatar works for Brawl Warrior. Leap is like your emergency button for Brawl Warrior. DK just doesn't ever get fully slowed by it because they're a DK. Brewmaster has Tiger's Lust, etc., etc.
Yeah, Druid just shifts out of bear form. It's fine. Just go human form. It'll be cool.
I don't know what
Leave that
Druids are
there.
supposed to do, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like they might just die.
Shift out of bear. I'm
Just
in.
shift. It's fine. Yeah. I don't know. It
You
is
can
a hard
also-
boss, though. Yeah.
I haven't convinced the group to do this yet, but you can use the AOE the boss does that knocks you back. If you all use that together, you can move a pretty good distance away from the orbs automatically.
By the way, that AoE happens once around the 1 minute mark and a second time around the 2:45 mark. It only happens
really?
like twice in the fight ever, but
Yeah.
it is a little bit of damage.
The second one is always clutch. I feel like the second one is always clutch for moving and repositioning the boss, right? Because you always start the boss on the side of the hill, and what that does is it makes like the 75% shard spawn all kind of cluster together. So if you guys didn't know, those of you in chat, if you tank the boss against the wall, what it does is it basically eliminates 180 of the 180 degrees of the possibilities where those shards can spawn. Therefore, it forces them all onto like one side of the boss. So what would happen then typically is that maybe 3 or 4 of them will be clustered together, making it a lot easier for your DPS to kill them in time. So you never want to tank this boss in the middle of the room. It's just not something feasible for your DPS to kill them all in a very timely fashion. So you always want to tank them against the walls of some sort. So yeah, basically.
Yeah, tanking in the middle is just banned in general because then it's not obvious which way you want to go once you get overrun with orbs. Also, so like once you get to the wall, kind of like move the boss a little in one direction just to show where you want to go. Maybe once things start to get hectic.
Okay. I think that is it for our dungeon by dungeon material. We can do our tip of the week and our Patreon thanks, and then
Half of it.
depart here. Yeah, next week we'll come back and we'll do the legacy dungeons as well. That should be fun. But let's do tip of the week. So my tip of the week is, first of all, in addition to Pika's wonderful YouTube channel, where there's some good stuff posted there, youtube.com/@Plkatv. Also, friend of the show, Yoda, has been uploading some videos recently that I wanted to shout out to. So there's some Sub versus Outlaw, which is better in Dragonflight M+. Also, Yoda's Sub Rogue M+ guide for Dragonflight. So if you're looking for some good YouTube content, you could get in fast. Only 1,000 subscribers. You could be one of the first subscribers to this, soon to be popping off YouTube channel. So at Yoda Easy on YouTube and at Plkatv on YouTube. Go subscribe to those channels.
That's Plkatv, by the way. Just
Polka. That's Polka. It's
Polka.
obvious from the way I'm pronouncing it. Plkatv. It's the same. We have the capitalization in your little nameplate here as well. That
Appreciate it. It.
makes it clear.
It's very easy for people watching.
Yeah. All right, Troll. What is your tip of the week?
This is a funny one. So there's so many like different potions that are higher ranks than each other. Like there's the potion of power, right? The elemental potion of power, and then there's also the elemental potion of ultimate power. And then if you're raiding, you also have fleeting versions of those. So a lot of people have macros with like all 4 versions of those potions in the macro and in a certain order. But also the macros use potions in your bags based on their position in your bags. So if you have 2 different qualities, they're going to use like maybe the lower quality potions if they're set before the higher quality potions in your bags. I discovered the other day.
You can also just do like /use, and then it's like space item : and then the item ID. That also works.
Yeah, that's probably a better way of doing it. I think some bag add-ons probably mix up like the official order of your bag slots. So you have to like kind of mess with it if you want to do it my way. But I just noticed like I swapped the positions on my potions, and then my macros used the rank 3s instead after that.
Good tip. Very good tip. Pika, we've already done your tips on the Azure Vault ones that came in during the Azure Vault segment, so we can now maneuver over to Tettles's clip of the week. Oh, what a one from old TTV Dratnos as well. Okay, is this from Reclear? This is mostly all right. Let's see.
Oh,
I got pinged with this yesterday
Dude,
morning.
this has...
Because...
Wait, okay. I this isn't the clip. I clicked through the videos, right? So it's better. Okay.
No.
Okay, I'm clearing.
Timber Mall.
Oh, spider.
Whoa.
Getting knocked.
Whoa.
Oh, no.
Whoa. All right, we're okay.
If you suck, you deep breath.
Whoa.
Yeah, Sack, you go.
Because the tank. What are your thoughts while watching that?
If you read those, I mean, okay. First off, you're missing the sound in this clip is like the best part of this clip, to be honest, because you just hear Dratnos yelling, as he goes flying off the platform. That is
Well,
the best part of that clip.
So if I
yeah.
still have threat when I die there, it's gonna start evading. So I need we've learned this from on that platform. So.
No way we
science,
learned
huh?
this.
Yeah. Or it's actually more if the tank doesn't die but survives and is standing down there, the boss starts evading. So you gotta be careful. Yeah.
But as a tank, you can just feel like the mass panic in your mind. You're just like, oh, I feel like I made it through. Oh no, something's going wrong, and you're just trying to stabilize, and you just can't. It's just one of those moments where it's just like everything is going wrong, and then eventually it's just like you just give up. Like, you know, it's not your day. It's over.
I cleared a lot of those circles on the ground, is what I will say. Look, I cleared a lot of them. So
That was a lot of circles that actually got cleared there.
yeah, it was good. We killed the boss. It was an easy one shot, not a big deal. All right. So yeah, Legacy Dungeons will be next week. No Q&A this week. We've incorporated it into the episode. So that just leaves us with our thanking of the patrons here in the 100th minute of our episode. As we, I guess a little bit less because we'll cut out that little bit where the internet went out in the middle. So our lovely patrons, Happy New Year to all, include Paul, What the Duck, Why Did They Make Me Murder My Duck Friends, Never Nude, Jaw, Dratnus Dino Pillow, Chromed, Trekkie, Chewy, Imagine not learning dragon riding yet because you're busy gathering duck feathers and the game cued you into Nokhud Offensive. Did you know there are flight paths in that dungeon as well, but they're very slow. But there are flight paths.
I did not know that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, in Nokhud?
In Nokhud, yep. There's a Nokhud flight path system if you don't have dragon riding going. So, you know, you do a no dragon riding Nokhud run if you want.
No, I didn't know that.
Category. ZivXX, Salty Senny, Necris, Sidmora, Tagdill, Nevuk, Eevee, Survival Bane, No Trick, I Forgot I Was Subbed Here, Dymat, Lufer, Rework Mistweaver, Dragonflight and Chill, Nyx, Duck Gaming, Gallic, Brusif, Dratnos Shards Abyss. Like and subscribe if Dratnos mispronounced Nokhud this week. Pepe Laugh Tea Time. I pronounce that word differently every time, I think.
I think that we all do.
Yeah. M Sanity, Xena, Rogue's Not Good Enough for Prog, Still Bad Enough to be sat for SLG, Bless Up. Red Color, youtube.com/workbreaker, Alphabet Soup, Druid Friends of Evolved Gaming, Number One Simpsky for Trelsky. Lurka isn't concerned about this Winds of Winter buff that you talk about because he had the wisdom to plan a trip back to Australia for the NA Winter. Presumably that trip will be ending sometime soon, or already has, so welcome home, Lurka. Milk, Pone, Windwalker Monks deal with nerfs by rolling with the punches. Due to Sims with 4-piece, Skelly will be going back to Elemental from Enhance. That's very that Enhance is now the place to be with this current 4-piece, I believe. Although I guess
Elemental not bad. Here's the thing: it's funny. It's funny. You never see Ellie played. Not that bad.
Yeah, Enhance is just so good. PI for sale. I have crafting to level. The Marsh Hare, Veil Strider Svar. Patreon tip of the week: in order to min-max Court of Stars buffs, reroll to a Gnome Holy Paladin with Cooking, Enchanting, and one other profession based on what else is in your party to get the most buffs available to one character. Big Head Small Brain, Narnar TV is back and ready to press Starfall. Agitar, Juniper, Vivoker, pro tip. While in Drakthir form, if you use your Headless Horseman's Hearthstone, you look really pog. Unconditioned Love and Deep Friendship with Nox. Also, Nox, reroll DH, please, and thanks.
Dude, okay, side note, completely about the Court of Stars boss, I am back blacksmithing again.
Oh, for the Court of Stars?
Yeah, I was sitting there thinking, I was like, damn, what buff is that? Because I had a free profession slot.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there thinking between JC for the Nightborn statue or blacksmithing for the trap, and I just went blacksmithing again.
Makes sense, yeah.
JC is pretty useful too. Like there's a lot of stuff you can make with JC right now.
Yeah, but if you're just using it for Court of Stars bot, then
I could go skinning for the waterlogged scroll.
Ooh, a little movement speed. Anyways, I think that's about going to be it for us this week. Thanks for coming on the show again, Pika. And again, everybody go check him out on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Plkatv, and all places.
Thank you.
But yeah, great to have you here, and hope everybody enjoyed this look at the 4 of 8 Dragonflight M+ dungeons.
Well, at least we have a content mapped out next week.
Yep, with the other 4. Later, everybody.
Peace.